Why is Europe still relying on Russian energy despite sanctions? In recent months, a quiet yet significant shift has been unfolding across Europe, particularly in France. While much of the Western world, led by the United States, has focused on imposing strict sanctions against Russia in response to its ongoing conflict with Ukraine, Europe has taken a series of steps that have caught the world by surprise. These decisions, centered around energy and trade relations with Russia, have left many wondering, what is really happening behind the scenes in Europe? Why, despite taking a strong stance against Russia, are European nations still deeply entangled with Russian energy exports? Despite the firm rhetoric from Western nations condemning Russia's actions, the reality on the ground tells a very different story. Europe remains heavily dependent on Russian energy, particularly natural gas. In fact, 2025 has seen record-high levels of gas imports from Russia, even as economic sanctions remain in place. This contradicts the narrative often promoted by some U.S. officials who have urged Europe to sever ties with Russian energy completely. The question arises, why is Europe still so reliant on Russian gas despite the mounting pressure to disengage? The answer lies in the delicate balancing act that European leaders, especially in France, have been forced to maintain. While they publicly align themselves with Ukraine and support the sanctions imposed by the West, their energy security concerns demand a more pragmatic approach. France, along with other European countries, has quietly maneuvered to ensure the stability of its energy supply, even if it means continuing business with Russia. One of the most surprising revelations in recent months has been the discovery that French and Danish shipyards are actively involved in repairing Russian gas tankers. This cooperation is happening despite the heavy sanctions that are meant to cripple Russia's energy industry. These shipyards, which have long been crucial players in global energy infrastructure, have now taken on an essential role in keeping Russian gas flowing into Europe. The fact that these repairs are taking place has raised eyebrows, particularly in the United States, where the expectation was that Europe would take a much harder stance against Russia. The shipyard repairs highlight the contradiction between public policy and private action. While European leaders may speak out against Russia, the reality is that they are still facilitating its energy exports. These behind-the-scenes dealings reveal just how difficult it has been for Europe to cut itself off from Russian energy supplies, despite the political pressure to do so. The repair work being done by French and Danish shipyards is not just symbolic, it is critical for maintaining the flow of Russian gas, particularly from the Arctic regions. Russia's Arctic gas exports are crucial during the harsh winter months when demand for energy is at its highest. By ensuring that Russian gas tankers remain operational, France is effectively securing its own energy future, even if it means working with a country that it has officially sanctioned. This pragmatic approach underscores just how complex Europe's energy situation has become. While European leaders continue to express their commitment to standing against Russia, the economic reality is that many countries simply cannot afford to completely sever ties with Russian energy. The European Union's ability to secure sufficient gas and liquefied natural gas (LNG) supplies has been largely dependent on its continued, albeit discreet, trade relationship with Russia. With EU gas reserves dwindling and energy demands soaring, the urgency to maintain these ties has become more pronounced than ever. French ports, in particular, have played a vital role in facilitating Russian gas exports. These ports serve as major transit points for Russian LNG, allowing it to reach European markets despite the ongoing calls for a complete halt to such dealings. While the public messaging from European leaders suggests that they are working to reduce dependence on Russian energy, the reality is that the infrastructure needed to import and distribute Russian gas remains very much intact. The United States has been vocal about its desire to see Europe completely cut off Russian energy imports. However, the truth is that the global economy, especially Europe, still depends heavily on these resources. French ports, along with other European energy hubs, are essential in ensuring the continuous delivery of Russian gas and oil. This has placed European leaders in a difficult position, caught between diplomatic obligations to the U.S. and their own domestic need for energy security. For Europe to fully sever ties with Russia, it would take more than just political declarations. It would require a massive overhaul of the continent's energy infrastructure, something that is neither simple nor immediate. While the U.S. has been pushing for Europe to move toward alternative sources of energy, such as LNG from American suppliers, these alternatives are both limited and significantly more expensive. Many European countries simply cannot afford to make a full transition away from Russian energy without risking severe economic consequences. Russia's energy supply is not only affordable, but also highly reliable, making it difficult for European nations to abandon it completely. Until a stable and cost-effective alternative is found, cutting ties with Russian energy would likely trigger an unprecedented energy crisis across the continent. The situation is further complicated by the fact that Russia's Arctic gas production plays a crucial role in meeting its export commitments. France's involvement in maintaining the infrastructure around these Arctic gas fields is therefore essential for ensuring that the flow of energy to Europe remains uninterrupted. The French shipyards, which are actively engaged in repairing Russian LNG tankers, have become an integral part of this equation. Their role in keeping Russia's gas exports running smoothly demonstrates just how deeply interconnected Europe's energy strategy still is with Russian resources. Even as political tensions between Russia and the West escalate, the practical reality remains. Europe still needs Russian energy, and Russia still needs European infrastructure to facilitate its exports. The geopolitical complexity of Europe's position cannot be overstated. On one hand, European leaders must be seen as taking a firm stance against Russia, especially given the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. On the other hand, they must also ensure that their countries remain economically stable and that their citizens have access to affordable energy. This balancing act has forced European nations, particularly France, to walk a fine line between supporting sanctions and maintaining crucial energy ties with Russia. As two of Europe's most significant maritime nations, France and Denmark play a key role in keeping the Russian energy supply chain intact. Their shipyards and ports are essential in facilitating the continued flow of Russian gas, making it clear that despite official policies, business with Russia is far from over. France's decision to repair Russian LNG tankers has not only allowed Russia's gas industry to continue operating smoothly, but has also ensured that Europe's energy needs are met, even in the face of mounting political pressure. Looking ahead, Europe faces an increasingly difficult choice. With energy demands continuing to rise and Russian supplies remaining a critical component of the continent's energy mix, the EU will have to decide how long it can afford to maintain this delicate relationship. While there is a strong push to diversify Europe's energy sources, the process of finding reliable and affordable alternatives will not happen overnight. The future of EU-Russia energy relations will likely be shaped by a series of compromises. Despite public declarations of cutting off ties with Russia, the economic reality suggests that this relationship will persist for the foreseeable future. As Europe grapples with its energy needs, the influence of the United States in shaping its policies cannot be ignored. However, the question remains, will the U.S. be able to force Europe's hand when it comes to Russian energy? For now, France and other European nations appear to be taking a cautious approach, continuing to engage with Russia while navigating the geopolitical pressures imposed by their Western allies. The challenge moving forward will be finding a way to balance political commitments with practical energy needs, a task that is proving to be far more complicated than many had anticipated.